So a couple weeks ago when I did a jersey giveaway announcement, I had asked you guys to list some of your most memorable Bulls moments in the history of the franchise, or at least since you've been a Bulls fan anyway. And I received a lot of good responses, some very common themes, some very unique responses. And so in today's video, I wanted to discuss these most memorable moments of yours, reflecting back on these moments, and also sharing my personal most memorable moment in Bulls history. So what's going on, everyone? You are listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, it's important to note that a lot of you who tune into the channel really vary by age. Some younger viewers, some older viewers like myself. And so for those who left their Bulls best memories, you acknowledge that you weren't around to remember the 90s Dynasty Bulls, which is completely fine, but I wanted to mention that because I'm sure for some older Bulls fans, you're going to say, how can your most memorable moment not come from the Jordan era? Well, that's why. Even myself, I'm a little bit older, don't remember the first three-peat all that well because I was very young. I was 5 years old when the Bulls won their first championship in 1991. And yes, I realize I'm dating myself, and I'm sure for some of you, I now probably seem very old. But anyway, keep all of that in mind when going through these. Now, I'm going to start with the most common response that I received in the comments on that video. And then I'll cover a handful of one-offs that I got as well. But believe it or not, the best memory that I received the most votes for was the Derrick Rose game winner in Game 3 of the playoffs against the Cleveland Cavaliers in the 2015 playoffs that put the Bulls ahead 2-1 over the Cavs. This was Rose that, the trying to get open, fires away, bang, call by Mike Breen. And honestly, when watching that moment myself, I think that is by far the loudest I have ever screamed when watching a Bulls game. And I screamed so loud because I wanted to beat the Cavs so bad. I knew that was likely the last push the Bulls could have realistically made for a title with Jimmy Butler, Rose, Noah, and Gasol. I wanted so badly to finally beat LeBron just because the Bulls had never been able to get past him. And with Rose hitting that shot, it was a huge win for them to go up 2-1 and still have to be at home for Game 4 to have a chance to go up 3-1. The other reason was that Gasol was a little banged up and not playing, and with the game tied, I knew that if the Bulls didn't win in regulation, they likely were not going to win in overtime. Now, the reason I was a little surprised this was the most commonly used memory, and that it was the Bulls' last game that they won under Coach Tom Thibodeau, and really the last game that they won when the Bulls were relevant up until this season, really. Fred Hoiberg took over the following year. Rose was then traded after that first season with Hoiberg. Noah left in free agency, same with Gasol, and then obviously Jimmy Butler was then later traded the following year. So it was a bittersweet moment for me, despite the fact that it was a memorable moment. The series was also just tough because the Bulls, well, ultimately lost it, and the Cavs went on to the finals. But of course, how can we forget that missed timeout by David Blatt that cost the Bulls the game by not giving the Bulls a technical free throw and the ball that would have enabled them to go up 3-1. LeBron hit a game winner, tying up the series 2-2, and the rest was history. So it's hard for me to consider this my most memorable moment, although at the same time, when the shot went down, as I said, I don't think I've ever been more excited as a Bulls fan than I had ever been before. That being said, though, it was also a banked shot, and it just would have been all more sweet if it was a nothing but net type 3 that won the game. But either way, they made the shot, the Bulls won the game, and it's still obviously a very big memory in history for the Bulls franchise. The second most commonly cited memory, and this is one of my personal favorites, sorry, not one of mine, it is my personal favorite, and I was fortunate enough to have seen it live as a kid, and that was, of course, Michael Jordan's final shot. The final shot that gave the Bulls the lead in Game 6 of the 1998 NBA Finals, and of course, the shot that gave the Bulls their 6th title, their 2nd three-peat, and the last championship that the Bulls have won as a franchise. This was the last shot before the breakup of Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Dennis Rodman, and of course Phil Jackson. We all knew it was going to be the end of an era, which also makes this moment all bittersweet as well, simply because we are still searching for that first title since that day. Now, there are some moments in history that you will simply just never forget. At the time, because I was young and was used to seeing the Bulls dominate, that was all I knew, really, was that the Bulls were going to be the best team in the NBA. And because we all knew that as long as we had Michael Jordan, we were not going to lose. So when the Bulls finally started making that comeback in Game 6, and Jordan swiped the ball away from Karl Malone from behind and started making his way up the court, You knew it was over. You knew that Jordan was going to come through in the clutch. You had seen it so many times before, and why would it be any different this go around? And when he pulled up on Russell and gave him that nasty crossover, no, he did not push off bitter Jazz fans. Russell simply got cooked and fell to his feet. It's why not a single Jazz player even attempted to complain to the refs that it was a push off. But when Jordan put Russell on the floor and pulled up for that shot and just hung there in the air to watch it swish down, that moment will never be able to be replaced. I mean, that's not just one of the greatest Bulls moments, that's one of the greatest moments in NBA history or in sports history, an iconic image, one of the most heavily watched clips on YouTube, and one of the most nostalgic moments for me as a kid growing up in the 90s. Now, the next one that was commonly used, and also one of my favorites, and I was in college at the time, so it brings me back to those exciting moments, was when Joakim Noah stole the ball from Paul Pierce in Game 6 of that first round of the 2009 playoffs, which was in the third overtime that finally gave the Bulls the advantage to take the win and send it to Game 7, which, yes, the Bulls lost in Game 7, but at the same time, this was a young, up-and-coming Bulls team with Rose as a rookie. Noah was in his third season. You had John Salmons, who I really liked in his limited time with the team. You also had Ben Gordon, Kirk Heinrich, Luol Deng. Like, that was just a fun team to watch. And they were the underdogs in that series going against the defending champions, the Boston Celtics. And even though they were without KG, the Bulls were not expected to take that series to 7 games being led by a rookie, but they fought through, played hard, and made it one of the most exciting series in NBA basketball that had multiple overtimes and kept everyone on the edge of their seats. The next one on the list was Scottie Pippen's iconic dunk over Ewing in the 1994 playoffs. You know, this was the year that Jordan had retired and Pippen was really carrying the Bulls. And with the rivalry with the Knicks in high gear and the Knicks being the physical team that they were, to see Pippen throw down that dunk and knocking down Ewing at the same time while walking over him and then pointing his finger in Spike Lee's face just after doing so is classic. Unfortunately, the Bulls didn't win that series and the Knicks went on to the finals, but the Bulls got the last laugh because the Knicks still have not won a title since the 70s, while the Bulls went on to win 3 more after that. Now, I'll go through some of these others that were a little bit less mentioned more quickly, but another that I saw was obviously Rose hoisting up that MVP trophy and being crowned that title as the youngest MVP ever to have won the award, which for Bulls fans was such a great feeling to finally have a superstar back in our franchise since Michael Jordan. You know, this is obviously another bittersweet memory, though, given the injuries that they derailed Rose's career and what could have been with his enormous potential at such a young age. Nevertheless, though, to say that the Bulls hold the record for the youngest MVP ever, as well as the greatest player of all time, is still great in the many accomplishments for this historic franchise. Another one some of you mentioned was the famous shrug game Michael Jordan did in the 1992 finals, where he hit 6 3-pointers in the half, which led to the Bulls' win. And of course, they went on to win their title, their second title. And this, for me, personally, is a memorable moment because the 1992 season is my earliest memory following the Chicago Bulls. I was a little too young to remember and really follow what was going on in the 1991 championship, which is unfortunate because it was their first title, and to do it also beating the Lakers in 5 games is something I wish I was older for, but sadly, no memories of that finals. But the 92 finals, and as a kid, seeing Michael Jordan go off was one of the most exciting things to watch and a big childhood memory for me. It's funny because at the time, Jordan hitting all those threes was considered to be insane because players simply didn't take that many threes back then and didn't hit them at that insane clip. In today's NBA, that would almost be seen as normal. Well, I shouldn't say normal. Hitting 6 threes in a half and hitting them efficiently, even it being done in the finals, is still pretty incredible, even if it were in today's NBA, but nothing like it was back in the 90s. Another big memory you guys shared was Derrick Rose's iconic dunk on Goran Dragic, and of course, probably wouldn't be as memorable without this commentary from Stacey King.
Lead pass, Rose! Stop it! Stop it! Do not do him like that! What are you doing, Dragic? Did you not get the memo?
I remember watching this game and thinking as Rose was going up, there's no way Dragic is going to go up and try to block this. And with how high Rose got on that dunk, it was like he almost overshot it and jumped too high and had to catch his balance on the way back down. This will forever live on as one of the greatest dunks in Bulls history, and Rose has a lot of great dunks with the Bulls, but this has to be one of the more memorable ones. One of the more recent memories, which happened just a couple years ago, was Zach LaVine's insane game against the Hornets, in which he put up 13 threes and had that crazy comeback win over the Hornets after the Bulls were down 8 points with 40 seconds left to go. This was one of the bright moments in the very, very dark days of the Jim Boylen era. Now, when watching this game, I nearly turned off the TV when the Hornets went on that outlet play that put them up 8 with 40 seconds to go. But I was like, you know what? I've watched the game this far, and Zach has had an historical game for him going off from deep. Let me stick with this one, even if it's a loss. And when the Bulls cut the lead to 5, and then Sato came down and knocked that 3 to cut it to 2 with just a few seconds left, and then the steal from Arcidiacono, Zach grabs the ball, has the presence of mind to go outside and shoot a 3 for the win. I literally just started laughing. Like, I was in disbelief from what I saw that somehow the Bulls came back and stole the game in that one. Like I said, a glimmering moment in an otherwise very dark time in Bulls history. Another moment you guys called out was Taj Gibson's epic dunk on Dwayne Wade in Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Heat. Man, I was so hyped after watching that first game, in which the Bulls dismantled the Heat at the United Center. And I really thought, especially given the fact that the Bulls had swept the Heat in the regular season, that this was the Bulls' year. They were going to beat the Heat and make their way to the finals with just how well they played in Game 1. Of course, it wasn't meant to be, and the Heat went on to win the next 4 games, but that dunk will also live as one of the greatest dunks in Bulls history. Some of you guys also mentioned as another greatest Bulls moment in history, obviously John Paxson's game winner in the 93 finals that gave the Bulls their 3rd title. That was another game that as a kid I was so used to seeing the Bulls coming out on top that they would find a way to win that game, even though the momentum was completely on the Suns' side at that point. Another moment was Tony Kukoc hitting that game winner in the 94 playoffs against the Knicks. This, of course, was the infamous play in which Pippen sat out because Phil Jackson drew up the play for the rookie Tony Kukoc. And of course, now years later, Pippen has come out saying that Jackson's play call was racially motivated and that he's racist. That kind of put a damper on this memory because Pippen's sitting out on the Bulls, and of course the Bulls ultimately lost that series anyway. But any buzzer beater, especially when it's against the Knicks, is always going to be a good memory for any Bulls fan. Another which I was surprised by, wasn't mentioned more often is what I mean, was Jordan's The Shot against the Cavs in the 80s, arguably one of the most iconic moments in sports history, let alone Bulls history. The epic buzzer beater will forever be remembered as another incredible piece to Jordan's legacy. I think the reason this wasn't mentioned as often in the comments is mainly because a lot of you weren't around at the time of this shot. I mean, I was just a toddler myself. According to my analytics, most of you weren't even born at that time, but this has to be one of the bigger moments in Bulls history as well that I think will never be forgotten. And then finally, there were some others as well, but one last one I'll mention is Rose's rookie playoff debut against the Celtics, in which he went off and set a rookie playoff debut across the NBA, scoring 36 points in Boston and giving the underdog Bulls a 1-0 series lead against the defending champions. This was, of course, the series that I had mentioned earlier, in which the Bulls went to take the Celtics to 7 games, and that saw multiple overtimes throughout the series and is known as one of the greatest playoff series in NBA history. Again, though, ultimately the Bulls did end up losing in 7 games. I'll end it there, though, guys. Let me know if there were any memories you think that I missed that I should have called out. Let me know in the comments, and also don't forget that tomorrow is Would You Rather Wednesday, where I react to your guys' Would You Rather scenarios, so feel free to leave your Would You Rather scenarios in the comments below. Until then, as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.